You were around Paul Kagame and Fred Rwigema way before 1990.
The two saved the life of General Museveni, Mama Janet Museveni. His wedding to Janet Rwigema, we had even bought suits. I thought I was going to be his best man. At that time, President Kagame was then in charge of security, the whole operational organization. And we coordinated together to make sure that the function went very well. He asked what was happening. He said there's a thief up, a robber, and he's armed, and he kept firing. So the policemen were scared. Fred then asked one of the policemen. He had a brand new AK-47, brand new. The man fired now several bullets. As soon as he stopped, he entered in and fired rapidly. He had pinned where the man was when President Kagame came from the United States. I remember I gave a humble contribution of a tent when he was leaving Sheraton.
Talking about the genocide now.
We went to Kasinsiro.
By road?
By road. When we got there, my brother, every minute there were bodies that were flowing into the confluence from River Kagera to the confluence of Lake Victoria.
You told me about when you came into Byumba with the wife of the Italian Prime Minister to rescue some orphans.
We saw all of a sudden a child, maybe 3 months. She had a cut on the head, stuck holding on to a breast of the mother.
Oh no.
And the mother was long gone. They didn't even have documents. These were children who were picked from another country into Uganda. They were dirty. But I remember Mama Janet Museveni came from State House. And she personally, the First Lady, personally, was bathing these children.
This is the very, very best. I introduce the very, very next. Big deal, you know this is the big league. Unsanga mumihanda ya Kigali mega big fish. Word on the street turakaze. Habari gani mumeze mute. Yutse nshima Imana kuva hunda mukiye. If you want the long form, come close and rub it. Wait, what?
The long form.
What did he say?
The long form.
What?
The long form.
The long form. The long form.
This conversation is brought to you by Akagera Medicines, a biotech company that is majority owned by the Rwandan people. Akagera Medicines is not only committed to expanding access to healthcare, but also supporting conversations that inform, educate, and empower. Learn more about Akagera Medicines by scanning the QR code on your screen or by visiting their website at akageramedicines.com. Stability in East Africa is often taken for granted, but it does not happen by accident. To understand how it's created, you have to go back to a time when the region was far less certain. Before 1990, the story of Rwanda was being shaped in exile among a generation that would go on to change the course of a region. My guest today on the Long Form podcast is Captain Mike Mukula. Captain Mike is a pilot, businessman, and senior figure in the national resistance movement. He moved in the same circles as Paul Kagame and Fred Rwigema, supported the Rwandan Patriotic Front during the war, and flew into Kigali after its capture. He has also been part of the moments that shaped stability in Uganda, from insurgency to regional diplomacy. So this is a conversation about power, how it's exercised, and what it takes to keep a region stable when everything around it is volatile. Captain Mike Mukula.
Yes, my brother.
Welcome to the Long Form podcast.
Thank you.
First of all, I want to thank you so much for welcoming us and this camera crew into your beautiful home here in Bugolobi. It's wonderful. It's wonderful.
I'm exceedingly humbled to have you here and profoundly honored.
Do you know who used to say that? It was, what's his name? Shaka Sali.
Oh,
Yeah, he used to love to say,
from Voice of America.
yes. Another great Ugandan.
Great Pan-Africanist.
And unfortunately, he's no longer with us, but
Yes,
I think he's here. He's always here in spirit.
that's correct.
Yes. Captain, a lot of people know who you are, have heard about you, have read about you. But today I want to discuss a few things that not many people really know about your life, about your history, and just how integral you've been in creating the East Africa that we see today. A lot of people know you as a Ugandan politician. They know you as a member of parliament. They know you as a minister. They know you as a mover and shaker in the Ugandan economy. But they don't know that the story of Captain Mike Mukula extends into Uganda's southern neighbor, Rwanda. So before we go into other East African issues, I want to talk about your history with Rwanda. You were around Paul Kagame and Fred Rwigema way before 1990, even before the commencement of the Rwandan Civil War that started on the 1st of October 1990. You knew the two men intimately. You could even say that you were friends. So be honest. Did you already sense that those two men, were going to shape the future of Rwanda at the time? Or did you only notice that later?
I think the most fundamental thing I see here is that President Kagame, who, in my view, lived in Uganda from the late 50s, and Rwigema, the late Major General Fred Rwigema, the two generals. I knew them personally and very closely too. I think the critical point was the history and post-history narrative, one who passed on at the beginning of the struggle of the liberation of Rwanda. And the first or second day in the liberation movement, in the October the 2nd of 1990, the late fallen general and a brother and a comrade, a great Pan-Africanist, was a very humble man, a person who dedicated his life more like Che Guevara, who was Bolivian, but committed his life to work with and to fight with Fidel Castro for the liberation of Cuba in 1959. You can also see that he participated in the liberation struggle under the NRA, the National Resistance Army, led by General Museveni, together with his brother, General Kagame. It's unfortunate that his life was cut very early. But these were very dedicated, very committed fighters. General Kagame, who took over after the fall of his brother, General Fred Rwigema, were comrades who worked very closely with General Salim Saleh, one of our decorated generals in the liberation of this country. And if you do recall from the books of General Museveni, the two saved the life of General Museveni and Mama Janet Museveni, and now General Kainerugaba Muhoozi, around about Banda.
Tell us that story.
They were detained and they were going to be killed by the UNLA soldiers. And somehow a message reached out to the two, General Rwigema, Fred, and General Salim Saleh and Kagame, who came in with a few other people to disengage the president now of Uganda, Mama Janet Museveni, and now the current CDF, who was then a young man. And they were just waiting for the evening to fall. Then they were going to be executed, because there were many people then in UNLA, especially at the high level, who were looking at executing or getting rid of President Museveni. So you can see that the two contributed tremendously towards first of all, the saving of the life of the president, fighting with him in the bush, and then later on, disengaging from the NRA and going to form the RPA and RPM in Rwanda. And I want to say that these are people that I respect profoundly. And I want to tell you that they go down in the history of two countries, both Rwanda and Uganda, as great fighters, great revolutionaries, and great Pan-Africanists. Yes.
One of the things that you were lucky to do was to actually know these men as friends. You know, sometimes when we hear about legends, we forget that they're human beings. And like human beings, had friends, laughed, danced. Let's talk about the late Fred. Someone told me that you owned, after the liberation of Kampala, you owned a place called Bimbo Ice Cream. Was that correct?
Correct.
And they said that Fred loved to go there. Here's a question. What are your secrets worth? And how far will you go to protect them? Every day, tens of thousands of hacked credentials for emails, social media, and other services are bought and sold on the dark web, all without victims suspecting a thing. If you're like me and desire some peace of mind, Threat Informant is for you. Built by ShieldTech Hub, a cybersecurity company, Threat Informant is a dark web monitoring online solution that allows you to search the deep web for hidden markets, detect your leaked data, and react before any damage is done. And here is the best part. It's available for government agencies, businesses, and individuals like myself. It's simple. If your data is out there, Threat Informant will let you know. So take control of your digital safety today and scan the QR code that you can see on your screen, or click the link in the description to sign yourself and your entire organization up. You cannot protect yourself if you don't know you're under threat. Get Threat Informant today.
Both the late Major General Fred Rwigema, who I think, in my view, his brother General Kagame, should honor posthumously as a full general. That would be my prayer. And that would be an occasion that many Ugandans will look onto, because that would be a God-given opportunity for the post-Rwanda, the post-liberation struggle to both Uganda and Rwanda to honor him.
I think he, in Rwanda he is honored. He's honored. in terms of our national heroes, he's at the topmost. Every Heroes Day, the president, the entire cabinet, the entire, including the diplomatic corps, go and, as well as the late Major General Fred Rwigema's family, go and honor him. But that's also an interesting view. I don't know whether you can actually reward someone a rank posthumously after their passing, but that could be an interesting idea.
It's food for thought. It's really up to the leadership in Rwanda. They are sovereign. This is just my humble position. And as you do recall with all clarity, that I have a lot of disrespect. I have a lot of respect. And I speak with a lot of heavy heart when we talk about the late Major General Fred Rwigema. Because he used to come to Bimbo. That's how close we were. He used to come to Bimbo. He used to go to his home.
He used to come to Bimbo, order ice cream.
He used to come home. He used to, I was very close to his mother. Very, very close to his mother. Actually, we started speaking Kinyarwanda. She started teaching me Kinyarwanda because she didn't know English. She didn't know Luganda. She didn't know Swahili. She only spoke.
And obviously, she didn't know Iteso.
She didn't know my language. But she would, one or the other, try to talk Kinyarwanda with me. But I want to say that being a humble person, small, she was very respectful. That's how deep we were close. We even, his wedding to
Janet
Rwigema, we had even bought suits. I thought I was going to be his best man. But then I think the hierarchy, they wanted to make it a military wedding. So they got General, one of the generals, Ivan Koreta, to be the best man. But we had bought the suits.
You and Fred?
Me and Fred, yes. Both for the Kasiki and the wedding. I remember the gray component, the suit we had. We had bought and we had measured very well. And the Kasiki was here in Bugolobi.
Where was it? Do you remember?
Yes, not very far away from here. One of the architects, renowned architects, I think, very close friend of Fred Rwigema. And at that time, General Kagame, President Kagame, was then in charge of security, the whole operational organization. And we coordinated together to make sure that the function went very well in Bugolobi. But they used to come home and sometimes come to Bimbo. And Bimbo was the happening place like you have now, JVs or Javas of Mandela. And he was a good supporter of Villa,
SC Villa,
Jogo. And I was a supporter of KCC, now KCCA.
Yes.
And
those are the teams in the Ugandan Football League.
They're all great supporters. They love football. I am a national supporter. General Kagame is a national supporter. But General Kagame, it was the only place he chose to eat from. And there was a lady called Mbabazi, she later on died, who was in charge of serving him milkshake. He loved milkshake.
Who's that? Is it?
General Kagame. Mbabazi was my cashier and was overall supervisor, but later on when she died, she chose, and in her will, she said, I want to be buried in Rwanda. And she was accorded that honor and respect. But the point I'm trying to tell you, that is how close we were, to the extent that the two would eat freely in my place. They would drink freely in my place. And we are free to interact with me. That's how free it was. I remember the late Fred Rwigema one time, we were driving out of Bimbo on Ginger Road, and now opposite what would be the NEMA headquarters. There was a man who had hijacked and taken over and was cornered in a robbery. And I want to tell you the bravery of this general. And everybody, the road was almost half closed, the Ginger Road. So he was in a Mercedes 320 black, UVS, I think 820. And he stopped and asked what was happening. And I want to tell you that he was putting on a black trouser, black shoes, white shirt. And
were you also there?
Yes, I was there.
In the same car?
In the same car. And what he did was, he asked what was happening. They said there's a thief up, a robber, and he's armed, and he kept firing. So the policemen were scared. Nobody could confront him. So I do recall very well that Fred then asked one of the guards, that policeman. He had a brand new AK-47, brand new, with one magazine. And he said, he took it from him. And he asked him, let me take it. And he went into the corner, the act of bravery. Fired, I think, 2 or 3 shots. And the man fired back. He fired 1 shot again. The man fired now several bullets. As soon as he stopped, he entered in and fired rapidly. He had pinned where the man was. And the man was no more. He was slightly up. And I want to tell you, he put the gun back and gave it to the policeman. And he drove off. We drove off. That act of bravery.
And you're watching all of this?
Yes,
because you're
like
a civilian.
Movie. It was like a movie. But that's the act of bravery.
Why? Is that an act of bravery, or at the time, had he already become a major general by then?
Yes, he was a major general.
So you're talking about it as an act of bravery. I'm wondering, it sounds a bit reckless, because he could have died. This idiot of a robber could have killed a man before his time.
General Saleh and most of the soldiers of NRA did not command from the rear. They breathed in engagement directly from the front. And that's why you find that I have a lot of respect for General Saleh. When you see him, he's bullet scarred, nearly about 20 bullets inside him. There are very few people who are as patriotic as that, and he still continues to live a very humble life, General Saleh. And that's the same position his brother had, Fred Rwigema. And there was an emotional attachment between the two. Very strong emotional attachment. And equally, General Fred and Kagame, General Kagame, President Kagame, equally had an emotional attachment. So you can see that there was a deep conviction about what they wanted and how they wanted it to be done. And that's the kind of leadership you had. That's the kind of revolutionaries you had. There are very few in the African continent who are at that level. That's why I liken them. I equate them to Che Guevara. I also liken them to Fidel Castro, and so on and so forth. No wonder, because of the discipline that had been inculcated to them, or they had developed in the NRA and transferred now to the RPA. These are among the top most disciplined armies, not only in the African continent, but in the world.
Let me ask you. So, for people who know Rwandan history, the Rwanda Patriotic Front was formed in 1987.
Yes.
It was actually formed here in Kampala, if I'm not mistaken, either Bogolobi or it was one of those flats. That's when they created this organization, this vanguard organization, with the hope of figuring out a way to return the Rwandan refugees back home and also creating a new political dispensation in Rwanda. For the 3 years that it was still in Uganda, it was what you'd call a clandestine organization.
Mm.
So maybe you were not aware of the different moving parts. But as friends, when you'd share a drink, would the Rwandan question ever arise? Would you ever discuss it and say, but how do we go home? How was that ever a discussion that you had? I know that it was a discussion in the Rwandan community. I want to figure out if outside the Rwandan community that was here in Uganda at the time, was there also discussions among friends? Listen, I know just how annoying it is when, just in the middle of a really interesting conversation on YouTube, an ad appears. That frustration is why we've created the long-form Patreon. For just $4 a month, you can enjoy ad-free listening, early access to conversations a full day before they're publicly released, and you're directly supporting the work that we do here. Every episode takes time, research, and sometimes plane tickets. We don't do it for money. We do it because we genuinely believe in sharing stories and conversations that matter. If you want to be part of that journey, you can join the long-form Patreon by scanning the QR code that you can see right now on the screen or using the link in the description. And if membership is too much of an investment, you can still support us by making a one-time donation via our MTN Momo using the code registered under LF Media 95462. Thank you so much for believing in what we do.
As you rightfully said, that the liberation movement and the right for self-determination of the refugees who are now anchored in Uganda, in the East African part of those in Burundi, in the DRC Congo, Tanzania, Kenya, and those who are in the diaspora. The struggle had many elements, but it was very difficult for an outsider to deepen. Even those who were within NRA as fighters, none of them would know, even the D-Day. But for me, who was very close to them, there are certainly times where you'd see that Major General Fred or General Fred would say, may I use Patrick Bitatoris? Can I use the apartment? I have a quiet meeting. And he would call some of the senior officers who are Rwandese origin from NRA. And they would just go up there, converge, meet very quietly, 2, 3 of them. And you would wonder what it is.
What they are cooking.
And this was not once, a number of times, especially culminating to the D-Day. There were also times when I would drive Fred to the airport and would go to, and he would be flying to Bujumbura with a different airline, Ethiopian at that time. And that movement was quiet. But obviously you'd wonder why a general from Uganda would be flying to Bujumbura on Ethiopian Airlines. There are times when you would have, I think even culminating to that, there was, in 1990, there was a time when Fred had moved from Kololo to Mienga, near the tank hill on the other side, overlooking the lake. And there was, that time we were getting what you call satellite television. And CNN had just been started to broadcast. And there was a man called General Schwarzkopf, the American general.
Yes, from the Gulf War, the first Gulf War.
It took 9 months, planning every day to attack Baghdad, or in Iraq for that matter, against Saddam Hussein. Fred was, and we worked towards setting up that satellite system. There was a Munyoro man, he died, he passed on. To set it up, he wanted to have, he constantly watched the planning and so on. The question is, obviously, as a general, as a fighter, that is something that he was all following closely. But very few people knew he was also planning an assault on Rwanda. There were also times where he would take my car. I had different cars, but he would borrow. I'd say, may I use this car? And he would drive. I got to know eventually, somebody would tell me, your car is in Mbarara. Another one is towards Gatuna. Friend would say, I've seen your car towards Gatuna. Katuna. Then,
and for people who don't know, Uganda today is full of cars.
Yes.
In the early 89, 90, there weren't that many nice cars in the country.
No.
So you'd know, okay, this one belongs to this one.
Yes. So when you see that, no wonder he was doing recce. He was doing positioning. Maybe he had forward scouts who were trying to see the forward launch of the liberation by the RPA. And also, there were also indicators. I remember a number of things that were happening. But one of the key things was, there was, before he left, I saw two movements that were very peculiar.
Which ones and which ones?
The RV.
What's an RV?
What you call a central meeting point. Rendezvous. RV is rendezvous. And I saw many of these fighters who I knew Bunyenyezi, I knew the doctor.
Bunyenyezi, Baingana.
Baingana used to come. There was a Kayoboke who used to live on top of my apartment here in Bugolobi.
Yes.
Bunyenyezi used to come home. Baingana used to come to my place, but he used to come to Kayoboke, one of the directors of Pep Scholar.
Yes.
That group with Amos Nzei. He used to come to my place all the time. But the fighters that used to be in BBR, used to be in northern part of Uganda fighting Kony, and so on and so forth, the movements in the north were meeting, and they would come in very briefly and move. And I saw that movement.
They would come to the flat in Bugolobi?
No. They would come to near Bimbo.
Yes.
The senior commanders, and they would move. They would meet and then move.
And you are watching all of this?
I could see all this movement.
Didn't you ever ask yourself what's happening?
I think the most significant thing was that evening we had a game between KCCA and Villa.
Yes.
And the late Fred Rwigema came. I was cutting my hair up on Udiam House. And he came to me and said, I wondered why. He said, I just want to look at you. I wanted to see you and look at you.
When was this?
The night before, that night actually he left.
So that would be the 31st of September.
That night is when he left. And
he just wants to look at you.
He said, I just want to look at you.
Wow.
That was my last.
Did you
painful.
I just want to look at
Yeah.
you. I think, I guess when you sit back and you're maybe having a cup of coffee and remembering,
Yeah.
do you wish that you had said something to him?
Well, you see, for somebody, and then eventually you get to know that he's passed on. And in a very short time, it was very painful, very, very painful. I don't know what his brother, General Saleh, had, but I know that it traumatized General Saleh tremendously. It's something that was more difficult for General Saleh and many of us at that time to hear later on that Fred had been, his life had been cut short in the struggle, in the first encounters of the liberation of Rwanda. So that is the kind of pain, that's the kind of deep memory you had with the freedom fight or the fighters of Rwanda. Reconnaissance, the movements, the special engagements, and so on and so
So you
forth.
said the first one was the RV, seeing the
A
fighters
few.
from the north
Yes, yes.
just come and then disperse.
There was a lot of movement, that night. Obviously,
that was the night about the 31st of September.
Yes. There was even a movement before. That means the advance force, the bridgehead, was now forming, putting together formation. And obviously equipment movement, which had to be concealed. It was concealed to Uganda, but it had to be more concealed to the enemy that they were going to attack. Because don't forget, Abiyarimana and the Rwandese government at that time had a deep, they also had actors here to oversee what was happening, because there was that suspicion that Abiyarimana had about Uganda, and particularly Fred Rwigema, and getting to know that most of the fighters who were senior commanders in NRA were a number of them were quite senior and were Rwandese. So obviously, as a leader, your intelligence would tell you that
something is being cooked.
Something will definitely be cooked. And they had to be very careful about it.
You've talked about for quite a while about the late Fred. But even at the time, Major Kagame was a good friend of yours. You were speaking when we met for the first time about your shared love of cars.
Yes. There's a time when we went together with my brother, the president of Rwanda, General Kagame. There was a wedding of Rugamba.
In Jinja, that is
in
Rosette
Jinja,
and Henry.
Rosette and
Rugamba.
Henry in Jinja. So he came home. We agreed that we would go together. And at that time, he had a Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon, white. And I had a Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon, same, but brown stripped. And he came to pick me from home so that we could drive together in the evening to attend the Kasiki in Jinja. And I do recall very clearly that he had suggested that we should go with one car to Jinja. And I said, no, let's go with two vehicles. We're moving at night. It is better for us to be cautious. You never know. I just said, you never know. He had escort. I didn't have escort, but we drove. And
who was driving?
he was driving his car. He liked President Kagame. And I always tell him, forgive me, Your Excellency. I prefer to call you Paul. And he said, no, don't worry about that. Whenever we met after he became president. But we agreed to move in 2 vehicles. He drives himself. He prefers to drive himself, to drive the car himself. And I drive also. Don't forget, I'm a rally driver. I prefer to drive myself. And I want to see what is happening in front. Even if I'm being driven now, I sit on the left, but I want to see what is happening. I don't sit behind. And so when we go to Jinja, we had the Kasiki, the niceties and so on, dancing. Paul, the president, loves dancing. He's a jolly person. He's a people's person, though reserved, but people's person. For going to attend the function meant that he was a people's person. And so after 1, 2, we decided we go back to Kampala to drive back. And he tried to start the car, started again. It couldn't start. So eventually we agreed after about 20, 30 minutes that the car wouldn't move. So I told him, I told you, you never know. So we came back in my car.
Who was driving?
I was driving. He was in the front seat. So we drove back. He knows it very well. So these are some of the times we had together. But that's how close we were. And I drove him back to his house in Basketball in Kololo. And I was in the company, I think I do recall. No. He also used to live with one of my great friends.
Who?
Rene Benzinge. He's now a captain on Kenya Airways. He flies the Dreamliner. Yes, he's been flying with Kenya Airways for a long time.
You know, one of the things that President Kagame talks about is he always had a dream of being a pilot and working on aircraft, but because he was a Rwandan, he was not able to be allowed into, I think, Soroti Flying School. So maybe that's why...
He would have made a very, very good pilot.
You think so?
Very good pilot.
Why?
President Kagame, General Kagame, is a very meticulous person. Very meticulous. And very thorough, very careful. No nonsense. Flying is about those credentials.
The small details.
The detail. The devil is in the detail. No wonder the success you see and is being scored in Rwanda is about meticulousness. The ability to follow however little a matter is. I also have some of those ingredients, maybe not to his perfection.
I mean, I've been to your house, and we're doing this in this format, but you can see everything is meticulous, white, clean lines, no clutter. I can understand, now that you're discussing this, how that pilot's thing.
That is what you have and you have had in General Kagame. The same was with the late Major General Fred Rwigema. An eye for the detail. And that's the same thing I have for our great leader, General Museveni. General Museveni is, I think it is a revolutionary instinct. The eye for the detail, memory, the memory of an elephant, the ability to pick up every detail and not to forget, and the revolutionary instincts, constant suspicion, constant movement, all those details that surround and equip and drive a guerrilla mind. President Museveni continues to live that mind to date. He has never relaxed. He is the man to the detail, and that's the same thing with General Kagame.
You are also a guerrilla. You were also a guerrilla during that time. Of course, during the NRA struggle, you were part of, maybe not at the front lines, but you were part of that.
You see, unfortunately, I went to the United States and did my flight training, the advanced flight training in Dallas-Fort Worth area, in the Acme School of Aeronautics. And my friends in 1981, the late Ndayondi, Fred Rubereza, all those are friends I was with in Teso College. They were very, very close friends of mine. And when I came back, there are many others who went into the bush. I actually looked for a way. I wanted to leave my profession and go and join them in the struggle, because I picked that position when I was in the US in 1981, February the 6th, when they went to the bush. But when I got back, I wanted to go to the bush and join my friends, because we were very, very close. And even at one time when we were in, I met Fred Rwigema in Fort Portal.
So this is during the Ugandan Civil War. So
Yes.
80 to 86.
Yes.
81 to 86.
I even met Fred Rwigema in Fort Portal. We had, during there were extrajudicial killings which were taking place here. A friend of mine was killed by a rogue soldier.
Where?
Of Tito Kello. In the road where Rwigema eventually came to live in. He was shot and killed. So anyway, we had to take the body to bury in Fort Portal. That's why I met Fred.
That was the first time you met him?
Yes. That's when I met Fred Rwigema.
So that is what, 85, 86?
85. And when we met in Fort Portal, Mountains of the Moon Hotel, we were staying with my friend Charles Twagira and another person who were very close with the late person who died. And in the evening, we had a drink together. Fred came and joined us. We had bottles of niceties, drinks. But he had wanted me to stay and join him, but I had a very young boy, and my wife had gone to deliver in London. But I would have remained to be in that struggle.
And that was the very first time you met him?
That's my first time to meet Fred.
So then how did you, because by the time, so this is 85, by the time you see him for the very last time, this is in 1990. How is it that in a space of 5 years, you became more than friends, you became almost like brothers? When you first met him, how did that relationship come into being?
We had so many things in common. We had the things he liked and the things I liked. I had a character that we were able to dovetail with. We really had something in common between the two of us. And I think from Fort Portal, we remained together. I remember in November or December thereabouts, because the liberation, Museveni captured Kampala and was sworn in on the 26th. But before that, the Tito Kello fighters, because I'd just come back from Fort Portal. And when we were driving back, we had to go through Kabohe to drive back to Kampala. And we said we are coming from Kabale. Because if we had come back, said we have come from Kasese,
they'd call you rebels and
they would call us rebels. Where you come, I would have been killed instantly. But we had to have the instinct of a gorilla to adapt to the struggle at that time, to say, how do you survive? The survival instinct. Kabohe, cut on towards Kabale Road, and then come back. And it was my brother's car. And he was in the army, the late Martin Anomot, Captain. And because that vehicle had been seen in Fort Portal, had been seen in the West, that man was eventually killed by, he was near Mulago. He was shot and his wife were all killed. And at that time, they were also looking for me. I ended up going into exile into Kenya.
You passed Busia?
I passed, yes, not Busia, I passed Malaba and crossed over to Kenya. Exile for the first time.
How did that feel?
Very difficult, very, very difficult. I had two options at that time. Either to go and join the forces, join Rwigema in the West, or move on to the United States, where I had lived and trained as a pilot. But within a short time, that 2 months, 3 months, Kampala was liberated and Kampala fell. And that's where we came back now.
And is that your experience in exile, even though it was only for a small amount of time, 2 months, is that why you felt quite strongly when the Rwandans decided to also leave exile, to go back home, because you felt the pain? Because by this time, Rwandans had been in Uganda since about 1959.
Yes.
So we are talking 31 years of exile, of being raised in Uganda, going through that entire system, having children also who are also refugees as well. Did you feel a certain kinship because you've also gone through although for yours was only 2 months,
whether
but
one
you felt
day,
it.
whether 30 days or 50 years.
Yes.
If you are trying your best to raise healthy children, but feel like you need clear, trustworthy advice, Healthy Beginnings podcast, hosted by Dr. Edgar Kalimba, is for you. With over a decade of experience caring for children and supporting the parents raising them, Dr. Edgar Kalimba shares practical knowledge grounded in science, but rooted in the lived experience of Africans. Out every Monday, Healthy Beginnings with Dr. Edgar Kalimba is on YouTube and all major audio platforms.
This podcast is brought to you by LF Media, home of great African podcasts.
Hey, if you're tired of working hard, but never getting ahead financially, you need to start listening to the Money Blueprint podcast, hosted by Isaac Musi. The Money Blueprint podcast isn't a get-rich-quick show. Isaac Musi, an expert in financial literacy with over 15 years of experience, shares practical tools that help you build discipline, make better decisions, and create real wealth. Out every Monday, the Money Blueprint podcast with Isaac Musi is on YouTube and all major audio platforms.
This podcast is brought to you by LF Media, home of great African podcasts.
The mere fact that you are externalized from your country is very painful. Very, very painful. The young people who do not know what it means to live in your country may not know what it takes. When I see the young generation now in Rwanda, the young generation in Uganda, they may not understand it. But I want to tell you that to be able to wake up in the morning in your country and breathe the fresh oxygen and look at the trees, the mere fact that even if you are poor, even if there's an element of poverty, you may not have a job, you may not have all that you wish to have, but the mere fact that you're living in your country and you're free, and there's peace and stability, is a huge difference. Two countries, Rwanda and Uganda, are all very peaceful countries, among the most peaceful countries in the African continent, and developing. Rwanda's growth is at about 7.6% per annum. Uganda is about 7.7% per annum. All these show you that these are rapidly growing countries, among the top 10 or top 7 fastest growing economies in the world.
Actually, last year, Rwanda's was about above 8.
Yes.
It's quite,
tremendous growth. When you look at Rwanda now, you read, I've not been to Rwanda for some time, but when you read about Rwanda now, the Rwanda that I knew, the Rwanda that I saw post-liberation, I'm very proud of Rwanda. I'm very proud of Kagame. I'm very proud of those who laid their lives to the liberation and self-determination of Rwanda and the people. I want to really say that Rwanda now is applying for FIA. The
F1.
F1 is under FIA, F1, competing with South Africa. Who knew that would be possible? It's now the cleanest city in the African continent, Kigali. It has got some of the best hotels, the best tourism destinations, expanding airline. You've got one of the best and most disciplined armies in the region and in Africa. The same applies to Uganda. Uganda is now peaceful from the north to the south, east to the west. I want to say that it is a dream come true. And to those who laid their lives for the liberation of Rwanda, may God bless their souls.
Yeah. Talking about those who've laid down their lives, as you mentioned, the late hero of both countries, Fred Rwigema, passed away on day 2, 2nd of October. But that was not the end of the struggle. And among for as Rwandans, we know the story of the liberators who partook in the liberation war. But I'd like to discuss your role or your small contribution. One of the things that, again, you spoke about was you were not just a spectator in the National Liberation War, the Rwandan Liberation War. You were an active participant as well.
Well, I'm happy to say that when I see countries now, a country like Rwanda, I've participated in many things in the region, quietly, my humble contribution, including my country. I participated in I moved a motion to cause the disarmament of the Karamojong or the Karachuna in 6th Parliament to take away estimated number of guns, which were close to 60,000, the largest catchment area of guns in the whole of East and Central Africa, possibly. At that time, Karamoja is about the size of Rwanda. But they wreaked havoc from the Acholi sub-region, Lango, Teso, Bugisu, Kapchorwa, and internally. My contribution also for the formation of the auxiliary forces, the Aro, Amuka, and Frontier Guards, Teso, Lango, and the Acholi sub-region in Kitgum. That was my humble contribution, really. People who have worked so hard and sacrificed their lives. When it comes to Rwanda, I want to tell you that when my brother fell on the 2nd of October, and 2nd of October every year from the time he fell, I don't work, I stay home. It is one dedication and commitment. I stay and meditate in memory of my brother. And I also have the same for my mother. These are 2 occasions where I do recall these fallen comrades. Now added to that is Raila Amolo Odinga, who fell who God took his life on the 14th of October. That was last year. So that now adds into the number of people I recall about that time. But my humble contribution when General Kagame, President Kagame came from the United States, I remember I gave a humble contribution of a tent when he was leaving Sheraton, where he was staying after he came back from
Fort Leavenworth. He was at Fort Leavenworth.
Yes.
Then he flies in through Brussels.
Right.
And then he lands in Kampala, obviously.
Right. The system put him to stay in Sheraton. And from Sheraton, he moved on. But my humble contribution at that time was a tent. I said, use this tent as a blessing for the struggle. And I gave it one of the senior, very, very senior people in RPA as they were moving southbound. But also, we were students and business community, and we formed what you call Uganda-Rwanda Friendship Association.
When was that one formed?
Immediately after, when the RPA, the Nkotanyi, when they started the struggle, they needed medicine, they needed funds, they needed to buy different things in terms of logistics. And every time I used to organize, I used to work with the students, I used sometimes be even the chief guest. Being the chairman of Uganda-Rwanda Friendship Association, it is one of the things that I felt was a noble duty, a contribution to the liberation of Rwanda. It may be small, but petite. Something is better than, it is part of the building blocks. And also, if you do recall, when in 1994, about the 8th, for 100 days, there was that carnage, the genocide, one of the most painful extrajudicial killings that took place in Rwanda. Very, very painful. I do recall very clearly that there was a lady who I was able to get in touch with General Paul Kagame. She was called Maria Pia Fanfani, the wife of the 6-time Italian Prime Minister. She flew in here, and I was one of the contacts that were made at that time.
Before you continue on that story, so are you saying that other than the work that you did as the chairperson of the Friendship Society,
Uganda-Rwanda Friendship
Association, and as well as any activities around 1994, there wasn't anything that, did you ever visit the rebel-held territories and or were you able to play any kind of, whether it's a diplomatic role or, a fundraising role, or is there anything that, I'm trying to, the way you speak about your friendships, the way you speak about exile, your own exile, I could not imagine that a person who feels so strongly about African liberation, about friendship, could do the bare minimum. I refuse to believe that. I refuse to believe that Captain Mike would have done just a bare minimum. I don't believe that.
No, I'm a very humble person, and I don't normally want to.
But I think
blow my trumpet.
I'm not trying to. I'm not asking you to blow your trumpet. I am also trying to understand the history of our partnership, because partnerships are not. They are made by people. It's not states. It's those interpersonal relationships that can build or break movements. And so I'm not asking you to boast. I'm asking you to help us understand what was needed for Rwanda to be liberated.
I think the most important thing I like to say is that the RPA was a people's struggle.
Mm.
It embodied and it entailed deep sacrifice and commitment by the people. Because the RPA and one of the reservoirs of the arms, apart from those that were bought from outside, was, apart from the Rwandese government, RPA had to buy arms and get them in to the fighters and replenish them constantly.
Mm.
Those were things that had to be done. But again, that was a specialized arrangement which was being done by the RPA High Command and those who were the external wing of RPA. And we had a number of people, those Rwandese who were living in the diaspora outside Rwanda. A lot had to be done to support RPA. So that's why it made it a people's war.
Mm.
The second thing was that there were certain things that had to be sent to raise medicine, drugs to support the soldiers, because don't forget, the conditions were dire. There were injuries all the time. There treatment, malaria, upper chest respiratory infections. All that was needed. So you needed to fundraise constantly. There was also the need for money, logistics, which would be able to be the fuel for the war. That had to be raised both within Uganda, which was now the frontline state. I want to call Uganda the frontline state because obviously not Burundi, although you had Buyoya there, not DRC Congo, not Tanzania, not Kenya. The bulk of the fighters were from Uganda. So some of the recruitment, I know of friends of mine who were in Nairobi who came in and we had to prepare, get them to where they would, trucks would move and take them from Rubaga Road, where they would be assembled and they would move to the front line for training, and so on and so forth. All these logistical arrangements were being done quietly. There are a number of people who were in Kigali now. I know my sister, the late Inyumba, who were very close working with her here. She was in the external wing of RPM. And Inyumba was one of the pillars, a mother of the struggle. And many others who were part of this struggle. So let me tell you that at times you'd get students coming, or those in the diaspora flying in from Brussels, from United States, from Canada, and so on and so forth, coming to Uganda. There was a movement of, and those who were in the DRC Congo who came and relocated themselves, wanted to be close to the theater, and so on and so forth. All these were happenings. There were a number of people who remained here. And I must tell you that there are people like General Saleh who worked behind the curtain, very deeply behind the curtain, to get this done. There are people like the late Chef Ali. There are people like that you cannot forget, General Kale. Kaihura. Jet Mwebaze, he died in the mountains of Rwenzori. And a number of what I know, close associates who supported. So when I talk about my humble contribution, do not forget General Museveni, with all bearings, did a lot to support RPA. And I must make it very clear. It's something that you cannot, and I would want to put it on record, because he cannot talk about it himself. And but we only can say that may God bless him for such a revolutionary heart, for supporting a just cause, And it is always important for the African continent and leaders to provide African solutions to the African problems. And that's what the African struggle is all about. So we had a common struggle, and the struggle of Rwanda was not limited only to the people of Rwanda. It was a collective for the African continent, and particularly those like Uganda, where, don't forget, the hospitality from 1959, the barrage of engagement by both, at that time it was the Francophone against the Anglophone, against Uganda. And particularly during the war, you'll find that there was a protracted engagement to try to diplomatically disengage Uganda from supporting RPA. But it's important for you to note that this was an African cause. And don't forget, when Rwanda got independence from Belgium, it was initially Rwanda and Burundi were initially territories of the Germans. The Berlin Conference divided us, and the point of departure with our colonial masters was the principles of divide and rule. Those anecdotes, those points which are very critical, which divided our people along the ethnic arrangements. Don't forget, the African continent has over 1,000 to 2,000 different ethnic arrangements, which caused that division, which later on led to the genocide in Rwanda between two groups, which should not be discussed again. And that's why we want to say, never should it occur again. We had a duty, we had a commitment to do that, and I don't regret it.
Talking about the genocide now, you've played a humble role in the fight. Then I'm sure, like all of us at the time, when the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi started, I was in Kisui Savio. I was in primary 7. And I remember reading about bodies being discovered on Lake Victoria, pouring in from River Akagera. This was just me as a young student. I'm sure you had a bit more information. Did you know? Because I remember I remember hearing the news that Habyarimana had been assassinated. It was around, I remember, I heard it on the BBC Swahili. And I remember telling my grandmother, and she had how she felt about it. Then all of a sudden I go to school, and then I'm seeing this in the news. When did you figure out that something terrible was happening?
The first encounter we had, just like you, the students, you were then young, but we were open to, at that time, the media was not as sparse as it is with social platforms you have now. You have TikTok now, you have AI, you have Twitter, you have, all that was not there. You had what you call the print and a limited digital media, electronic, which is television. The first encounter was when I was the wife of the 6th-time Italian Prime Minister's wife came here, Maria Pia Fanfani. And at that time, in Byumba, she was getting messages from Italy. Italians are very passionate people. And this lady was working with the UN. She was a special envoy of the UN on peace. And all these things were happening in the theater at that time. And you remember, it was about 100 days from the time Habyarimana aircraft was shot down to the time the killings between 800 to 1 million people perished. In Vyumba, I remember we got permission, President Museveni and the RPA then at that time, to go to Rwanda.
So I understand. At the time, you did not know what was happening there.
No, we knew what had taken place because what information was flowing.
Did you know the scale? At the time, did you know that before you went to the ground on the ground? Did you understand what you were reading?
The scale had not been broadcast to the world. And when I went in, first of all, to Kasensiro in Rakai district, and I had my very good friend, the late Pinto, who was a member of parliament for Rakai, that lower part. And later on, I went to look for my friend, Joan Kakwenzire, who was a special assistant to the president. I said, come and join me. I actually brought her in. We went to Kasensiro.
By road?
By road. When we got there, my brother, every minute there were bodies that were flowing into the confluence from River Kagera to the confluence of Lake Victoria at a place called Kasensiro. And these bodies were floating. And I want to tell you that this was one of the most horrifying, traumatizing debacles, or maybe the view that you'd see. This skin of most of those bodies which floated from the river was taken off. And you could see, like, when you see animals that have been deskinned when they're hanging in the butchery, that's how human beings were floating. Clothes on, this pigment was, because of soaking, taken off. And I want to tell you that the brutal killings, the manner in which they had been hacked with blunt objects, and some heads, some without heads, floating into River Kagera. There is a place called Sango Bay. Sango Bay was all full of bodies. It is, if you go into there, you'll be able to see it, Mpigi. And the bodies were floating as far as Kisubi, your school where you're in, and all the way to Jinja.
So for someone who doesn't understand this, in terms of the scale, Sango Bay would be close to the Rwandan border. Or maybe it would be...
After Kasensiro,
yes.
Then you have Sango Bay on Lake Victoria. And then there were a number of other bays.
Yes.
And this is where it is a watershed, and the bodies were mixed with water hyacinth. And this fish importer,
that would be the Nile perch.
The Nile perch. This was food for the Nile perch. And in some of the areas like in Mpigi where we went to, we drove in to try to see how we can rescue these bodies when we were pulling them for mass burials. We were burying them in mass graves. Some of them 3,000, 4,000 bodies mixed with lime. This is traumatizing, my brother. And I put two of my aircrafts, a Cessna 172, 5 X-ray Golf Mike, and another Cessna 182, which was these two aircraft, I was flying one myself, and the other one was being flown by Captain Rene to oversee and to try to see these bodies. They were gentlemen from State Department.
That's the CIA.
Whatever they are, State Department. They wanted now come and quantify, and they had counters. I put them in those aircrafts on daily basis at my cost. These were my aircrafts, personal aircrafts. I had 5 aircrafts, but these were 2 single-engine aircrafts, a Cessna 172 and a Cessna 182.
And so they would go counting?
They would count bodies. But I talked to Patrick Mazimpaka,
The late.
the late Patrick Mazimpaka. Oh, he's dead now?
Yes, he passed away
Yeah,
a
sorry.
few years ago.
The late Patrick Mazimpaka told me, try to make sure that all these bodies that you have, you quantify them. I mean, lay out a matrix where you have children, you have female, you have male, and try as much as possible to have the totals, numbers that you are getting and where you are burying them in order to justify genocide. And for the first time, I put a team from BBC and Reuters from Nairobi who flew into Entebbe, picked them, and drove them personally with my vehicle to Kasensio. These pictures,
To see the bodies.
to see the bodies and record them. These were the first records in the early stages of that genocide and the hateful bodies that went out to the world to justify genocide. To justify genocide. My brother, these were very painful, very, very painful. When you talk about Kwibuka,
Kwibuka, yes.
Kwibuka,
Remembrance.
the remembrance, it is in my head permanently because I remember I took Cardinal Wamala, now he's 100 years. I picked him from the Rubaga Cathedral. In my car, Bronco, an American car, left-hand drive. Two of us alone. I picked the Cardinal from Rubaga and drove him to Kasensiro. He only stopped in one of the cathedrals to pray before we went there. And when we got to Kasensiro, I remember there was a body. This struck us. There were many bodies that were flowing in. There was a body of a lady who had a child in her back. And she had this suka, the ones the Rwandese ladies wear. And she had a baby in her back. But the skin was off, and but the clothes were still around, wrapped around her. I think they were
And
tight.
wrapped around the baby as
And
well.
the body had expanded, wrapped around the baby. I tell you, this has been one of my most painful, very, very painful sights. Because I remember Cardinal Wambana exclaimed in Luganda, forgot even English, Luganda, Katonda waffe, Bikira Maria tusasire, Bikira Maria tusasire. Then he held on to his crucifix,
His rosary.
and started praying. This woman had died in the most painful way, but the clutching of the baby showed that she died but never let go of her baby. People who do not know about genocide and the extrajudicial killings, the pain that was subjected to the people, do not know what it means. So when you see that kind of happening, and when later on this was broadcast in BBC, Reuters distributed it to many of the broadcast houses globally, is when the world now got to see that the UN, which was supposed to be the peacekeeping force, abandoned the Rwandese, and even those who were trying to jump into the C-130s and different aircrafts, each country in the European axis, the Americans, the British, and so on, those who were part of the peacekeeping force, abandoned the Rwandese and took only their people and left them to die, to be killed with impunity. That pain. And that's why you want to note, and those who are intelligent enough to listen to this, to say that when we talk about African solutions to the African problems, the Europeans, the most powerful, left Africans to die. And when we buried people in mass graves, 2,000, 3,000, 6,000, thousands and thousands of them. And when you witness pigs, dogs dragging people at the shores and so on and so forth, seeing bodies float, many people suffer from memory lapse. But this is alive and it is active in my mind. To date, it was like it just happened. So the pain in me is deep to the bone marrow.
You told me about when you came into Byumba with the wife of the Italian Prime Minister to rescue some orphans.
Yeah. We asked President Museveni, and actually for that belt, PG and Kasensiro, Rakai, all the way this way, I asked the president to declare a state of emergency to first of all to bury. But later on, I asked the president to allow us and to give us some of the vehicles. And he was courteous enough to provide that from State House. And we went to Byumba.
That's northern Rwanda. At the time, it was controlled by the RPF by then.
Yes. And we, in one of the homesteads, picking children, her interest was mainly children because the parents had been killed. Her interest was mainly children who she did not want to have to suffer the post-traumatic effect of the war. So these children, most of them were below the age of 10, 12, that age, young children. In one of the homesteads, I do recall banana plantations, old Mabati houses. And from the front, you could see men, the family, all wiped out, all killed. But we heard a noise, small noise. We thought it was maybe a puppy or a dog of a child saying, there is of a child. So when we went behind, we saw all of a sudden a child, maybe 3 months. And I have a picture of that here. A child, maybe 3 months or thereabouts. She had a cut on the head, stuck holding on to a breast of the mother.
Oh, no.
And the mother was long gone. That was a very painful sight, my brother. Very painful in that when we brought this child and was crying, the first thing we had was baby milk, this instant milk that was given. The Italians had all that. They had that in their group. There were a number of them. Those were brought in a bus, one bus that was being provided by the President Museveni. Brought them to Entebbe. At the airport, we had one aircraft, a C-130, and Italian Air Force, but with Red Cross. It had a roadster there, which had been organized by this lady, Maria Pia Fanfan. She's dead now. And at the airport, I do recall that they were being prepared. They didn't even have documents. These are children who were picked from another country into Uganda, and they had to prepare documents for them to travel to Italy, to Rome. And clothes were being given to them. They were dirty. They were not prepared for the journey, but they had to prepare them. This lady was so kind. And what happened therein is I remember Mama Janet Museveni came from State House. And she personally, the First Lady, personally was bathing these children.
You saw this by your
Myself
eyes.
like this. But she would be overwhelmed by the cries of the baby and so on.
And of course, these babies have wounds.
Yes, they have cut and so on. She could not, she was sometimes overwhelmed, and she, being a mother, she knew what it was. And the cries of the children alone, the pain, the cries of these orphans. And she would go to the bathroom. Sometimes she would go overwhelmed and cry in the bathroom.
You saw that?
Personally. That lady is so gracious. May God Almighty give her life. Very kind. Mama Janet Museveni is a very kind person. I also saw the Kabaka of Uganda. He's alive, he knows it. If he watches this, he will see it for himself. Coming from southwestern part of Africa, and he landed at the airport. And he saw this. You could see he was overwhelmed by the pain as a father. Now, this kind of things eventually when they took off, and I was there personally to see them, as they closed the door to fly these children, 48 of them, to Rome, as we waved them off. These were orphans from Rwanda and being taken to another country to be given care. And they were taken to a military hospital in Rome. After some time, if you do recall, this was in about little after, maybe June, July, when they were taken to Rome in the military hospital. Remember there was the World Cup between, I think Italy with, I think Nigeria or something. And they went to penalty shootout. Eventually, Italy, the Italians won. And at that time, Italy was, which is a sporting country, football, the fanatics and so on, now lit what you call the fireworks. And these fireworks were, you know, the crackers are like bombs. And these children all of a sudden who were shocked and surprised started running out of the hospital from the rooms that were in. Young children, thinking that the Interahamwe had come back. That is a very painful experience. So I want to tell you that when Rwanda takes a defensive position, when they go through these challenges, you can really appreciate their justification. It's a very difficult time to, when you say that never again. It comes from this background. It comes from a painful history. Never should people, Africans, same culture, same history, same color, same religion, and so on and so forth, kill each other with impunity. And yet they kill themselves with the plain view of God Almighty. How inhuman can Africans be?
Hey everyone, I just want to take a moment to thank all of you who've been a part of the long-form journey. Every view, comment, and subscription has helped us grow and get to where we are today. But here's the thing, about 72% of the people who actually watch this podcast haven't subscribed yet. We want to keep bringing you even bigger conversations with even bigger guests, including, let's say, even the president of this country. But this milestone starts with you. Subscribing is free, but it makes a huge difference. It shows our guests that what we're building here matters and that it's worth their time appearing on my platform. So please help us and hit that subscribe button And we'll promise to keep delivering powerful, meaningful conversations. Thank you so much. Now, let's get into the episode.
It's tough. It's tough. Fortunately, as you say, the genocide lasted 100 days.
Yeah.
And fortunately, the RPF won. If I'm not mistaken, you might have been the very first person who landed on liberation. You flew in your plane.
President Museveni, State House, gave me the instructions. Now I can talk about this. I can declassify it. It was classified. This is classified information for a long time. But I was the first. I had an aircraft, which was a 19-seater. And we flew from Entebbe to Kanombe International Airport. I was the first to land post-liberation. No aircraft had landed in Kanombe Airport after all this debacle to pick President Paul Kagame. And you had a number of people, Dr. Ndahiro, now, I don't know.
Emmanuel
Ndahiro. I don't know, I think he's a general now. Toijin was the Secretary General of RPF, and a number of other senior hierarchy people. I'm told now he's in exile or something, but that's their matter. I don't get involved in their internal being. But I picked them, flew them to Entebbe. And I saw Rwanda, because we just landed, picked him and flew him back here. But later on, I kept flying into Rwanda. And I have seen Rwanda as a country that was wasted, a failed state.
What was the state of the airport when you landed the first time?
It had bullets, shutters, and so on and so forth, but it was still intact.
How was the runway?
The runway was okay. But approaching also, you could see left and right, you could see the scars of the war, because obviously as you're approaching from the side of the landing in Kanombe International Airport, you fly over that time Habyarimana State House. So I could see all this.
And you felt 100% safe flying in?
For me, I will tell you one thing. For this just cause, I was prepared to risk my life and to risk even my own aircraft. And if there are people who lost their lives, even my brother, Major General Fred Rwigema, lost his life, and many others. What is one soul?
But you thought about it.
For the just cause of millions of people.
I hear you. But you were also aware of the dangers.
There were dangers, definitely. Another PG could bring you down. A 12.7 millimeter gun, anti-aircraft, could bring you down. Any machine gun and it would be able to bring you down, cause problems, and so on and so forth. Different types of equipment now could bring you down. This was only 2 days after. But it was important for you to note that
2 days after liberation.
2 days after days after Kigali fell.
So that would be around the 6th or the 7th.
Whatever date, I don't recall the date, but this was 2 days after Kigali fell to RPA.
You came, picked up,
landed. They were waiting at the VIP, VVIP, the presidential dais. After we touched, I went and picked the team, packed, and then got them seated, and we flew out. Into Entebbe, packed it at the end. State House came and picked them. So I know what it meant. And I must really salute the fighters of RPA. The RPA went through an enduring experience. And I think that it's important that President Kagame should start to put together, document his memoirs, just like Fidel Castro did, Che Guevara did, President Museveni did, and most of the Mao Zedong did in China. And most of the liberation fighters, people like Nelson Mandela, and so on and so forth. We should not miss the opportunity like we had with the Mozambican leaders in the struggle. Because if you do recall, Samora Machel never got the opportunity to write this book. But Mwalimu Julius Nyerere documented every aspect of his life. I really urge my brother, General Kagame, the president of Rwanda, with all due respect, to try to start documenting. I'm very sure he must be working towards that. But it's one of the memories that the children, our children, and the young Turks would love to read.
Absolutely.
What it means to bring a country from ashes to prosperity and to drive it to a modern state, like Singapore did of a country that was a failed state, abandoned. Those memoirs are very important.
You know, when we talk about stability, everyone talks about stability. No one talks about the price that has to be paid for stability. You're talking about Karamoja. You've also talked about the war in Lango, the war in Acholi land, and all of those were wars that that did not end just because of dialogue. You know, sometimes force and other extremely hard decisions need to be made to create stability, to create peace. So maybe let's now widen the conversation. What is the line between creating stability and creating long-term resentment? Because sometimes someone would say the cost of stability was too much. Yes, you've given us stability, but now I resent you. I hate you because you've caused pain to me. So I want to, you're a man who's been at the heart of creating stability. Where is that line where you're able to, as a society, move on without ending up creating the ingredients for a new insurgency, a new set of resentments?
I think the point is the African continent. Africa, for 400 years, we had our people being sold as commodities by the Europeans. And you'll find that I've been to the port in Senegal, in Dakar. They call it Go Island, Gore.
Gore Island, yes.
Where you see the documented history of the movement of our people. 5 people in a family, a mother, a father, 2 daughters, 1 son, being taken to different destinations, never to meet again, and never to see each other again. You just liken this 500 years after to Rwanda, where you have a mother, a father, 2 daughters, and a son, all being killed, never ever again to witness life or to see Rwanda after. What am I saying? There's what you call reconcilable differences. There's what you call irreconcilable differences. And I want to give you again another very clear narrative. Uganda, under General Museveni, went in 1985 into the peace talks in Kenya, chaired by the late President Moi. These peace talks, as they were going on, they reached what you call irreconcilable differences, where after even signing the peace agreement, extrajudicial killings, impunity, and what you call autocratic and unfortunate incidences being recorded, even during the peace talks. President Museveni said, no, I think we have reached irreconcilable differences. Despite the peace talks, despite us coming together, hammering out what you call the key points of our differences, but where we have reached is irreconcilable. Meaning that if you cannot adhere to the letter of the agreement and you still continue with that, even if we have a government of national unity, NRA coming together with UNLA, these differences will again spark. The best way is to go for a showdown. And President Museveni went for a showdown. When the peace talks broke down in November, within 2 months or 1.5 months, NRA had taken over power. And by the 26th of January 1986, NRA gunned itself into power. And Museveni was given the instruments of power by legal notice number 1. What am I saying? I think that when he saw that going into bed with these fellows may not help the country, may not achieve the purity we're talking about, and may not be able to give us, despite the loss of lives of the fighters in that 5 years, we will not achieve what we want. The best thing is to go for a showdown. And indeed, you can see that there has been a marked difference from therein. The country, for the first time, it is only NRM which can boast post-colonial period of having a government or a party or an organization which brings together all the people of Uganda into one. And the same applies to RPA and RPF. It is only President Kagame who has now been able to come out, having had irreconcilable differences with the peace talks in Arusha, and said, no, we go for a showdown because we seem not to be edging towards what we want.
So what you're saying, so that I can understand this, is that you can always aim for dialogue until there is a line that you cannot cross.
The Rubicon, the red line.
And in your what you're saying is that that line is when there's no humanity present. For example, in Rwanda, as soon as the genocide started, the RPF moved to end the genocide, but also to kick out the government that it had been in peace talks with. Are you saying that that is, because you also talked about the arrows that you helped form. Is that because you realized that the Konyi rebels they could not be negotiated with? That there was a line that you and them got irreconcilable differences and said, you know what? We have to.
There is where you can agree to agree.
Mm.
There is also where you can agree to disagree.
Mm-hmm. Where's the third place?
But there is also where you go for a win-win situation. But the final position is when you see that this is irreconcilable. And that point comes out from certain tenets of what your mission is. Because every struggle is mission-based. Every struggle. And if your mission is to liberate a country in order to achieve what you call the minimums, and for the national resistance movement, they had a 10-point program, which had to be achieved. Later on, it was enhanced to a 15-point program. You look always, as Mao Zedong talked about, or Mao Zedong, the big picture.
There's a saying in English that if you want to make an omelette,
you must break it.
Break a few eggs.
Yes. Now, there is a liberation movement is not a tea party. A liberation movement entails sacrifices. It entails loss of life. It is sweat and blood. You have to work towards achieving the cause. Every war has a cause.
And every war has a casualty.
That is the cost of it. The cost of war has a casualty. But there's what you call a just cause. Now, RPA had a just cause. NRA had a just cause. Now, all this put together, and many other liberation movements, the Cuban Revolution, the Chinese Revolution by CCP, China Communist Party. You have also got the North Korean MPLA in Mozambique, the Rwandese, the Angola, and so on, ANC, MK, Nkoto Wasizwe. All these are just causes, because there is no way you can go to bed with apartheid. No way.
Or with genocidaires.
Or genocidaires. Apartheid or genocidaires, there is no way you can go to bed with them. In order to put the matter to bed, there has to be a Rubicon. That Rubicon or red line must be drawn. If you cross that once or twice, that is irreconcilable, because you are inflicting damage to the cause. You are hurting the cause. So those are the minimums of a liberation struggle.
And this is my last question to you, because you've talked about the ingredients of a liberation struggle. You've also spoken about the sacrifices that a liberation struggle must be ready to bear. When I spoke to you, you spoke about, we were talking about the NRM, because one of the things that you've done, you've also been a major player in the NRM. And you are what I'd call a senior citizen, although you do not look like one at all, but you are. You said that one of the biggest failures that you think the NRM has had is the lack of cross-generational dialogue. That the men and women of the 80s who created the Uganda that exists today, and even helped create the Rwanda that exists today, that as they get older, that the patriotism, the revolutionary fire is still within you, but is not being transmitted. If, as you say, that is what is happening, if that continues, what happens to the future and stability of Uganda in the next 20 years when your cohort is when it's no longer here?
You have got to look at the demographic bulge. This demographic bulge, for example, look at Uganda. 80% of the population is below the age of 30. %55% of the population is below the age of 16 years. Between those children born today and 8 years, and 4 years, there are 8 million children. Above the age of 80, there are 247,000. Obviously, there is a variance. And if you are to have what you call a realistic narrative or discussion on the paradigm shift, the mindset change, we have what you call the ideological line, the big picture. The young people look at this liberation or this struggle as if they are reading the Bible or slave trade. They're reading history. But today you're talking about the reality of life, which you cannot interpret to the young people. So they are not ideological. When you talk about the 10-point program or the 15-point program, they may not want to listen to it. Very few will pay attention to what you're talking about.
Why?
Because the pillars of governance, there is no what you call cross-generational dialogue. And that's why President Museveni talks about Bazukulu. The challenges, the new challenges, the challenges we face at that time are different from the challenges the young people are facing this time. At that time, we faced insecurity, being in exile, seeking for self-determination. Our cause was different. The young people, their cause is different. They're talking about jobs. They're talking about poverty. Number one is poverty. The youth are looking at opportunities in order for them to live a decent life. They want to be like me. Okay, I came out from a poor background. My father and mother separated. I was a very poor young man. But I thank God that I worked hard to get to where I am. I'm self-made. There are many young people who are looking at who do not have money, both rural and urban. There are many young people who do not have jobs, much as most of them are more educated. Don't forget, by 1962, when we got independence, we had only 103 graduates, 2 masters. One university, small university, has more than that, graduating hundreds and thousands of graduates. At that time, in 1962, from the time Adam and Eve left Eden, we had only 103 graduates. What does that mean? The narrative now and the discussion we had before is different. And I want to tell you that when you talk about poverty, youth unemployment, corruption, ignorance, you talk about service delivery, going to hospital and they need medicine, and so on and so forth. These are the fundamentals of a modern society. The young people now talk about AI. Young people now talk about Wi-Fi. They want to get a data on their phones. Don't talk about liberation to them, ideology to them. That's why you find that now cross-generational dialogue is very crucial in order to manage transition and to manage success. Managing success entails a lot of dialogue so that there is no miscarriage of succession. Because success without succession is a failure. And that's why I'm calling for intergenerational dialogue.
How has the transition started, do you think?
Transition is not only leadership. Transition is about many aspects of life, those fundamentals I'm talking about. Because if you talk about the young men then of 1981, 1980s, the young men of 1986, the Rwigemas, the Kagames, the Musevenis, and so on, that's different from the new group now. The new group has a different perception and expectation. You're managing perceptions and expectations. The new group has the young people. They are more global. They are now living in a global village. They are on TikTok. Information moves quickly. Both false, what you call fake news, and real news. They deal with AI, artificial creation of reality, and rapid information flow. You're talking about social media platforms like X or Twitter. You are on several platforms. If you look at it this way, before, everybody was coming to read the newspaper and listen to the radio. Now, I don't know when a generation like yours last read the New Vision or Monitor. That tells you that there is what you call a mindset change. That mindset change calls for a paradigm shift. When I was in Harvard Kennedy School of Government, I did political and economic reform. You now look at different paradigms, and it is case studies that determine the drive towards a new evolution of world order. You now see that whatever happens in Vietnam will get to be known in Uganda or in Palestine or in New York or in the capital of in Moscow. It will be broadcast globally at the spark of the moment. You now have satellites. You now have high-speed information flows. The highway of information has become so broad that what changed the world were 4 key pillars: civilization, education. When you talk about agrarian revolution, you talk about industrial revolution, scientific revolution. Now you talk about ICT and information technology and AI. This tells you that the world is dynamic. It's moving into modern transformation every day. Now, in terms of governance, you've got to redefine your leadership interests. Rwanda has got one of the youngest ministers who is ICT. She's below the age of 30, I think.
No. She's below 40. Though.
Yeah, whatever it is. Now, very young, and many other positions. That is managing transition. Okay?
How about here?
We're equally doing the same. The Minister of Sports is a young man. The Minister of Investment, a young lady. You have got many others who are young. But you see, a forest is made of tall, old trees and young trees. You cannot cut a forest and cut the tall trees. You need the tall trees to bring up and give shade to the young trees. But the forest continues to manifest. The point I'm trying to tell you, there has to be cross-generational and intergenerational dialogue. Interests have now come on board where you have the interests of gender, the women. Rwanda has got over 60, maybe in some areas even 70% in some sectors in governance. These are new interests which have come in. But it comes out from the foundation. 2, you've also got the army. The army can no longer exercise extrajudicial killings as it used to be and get away with it. The armies are more disciplined than 40, 50 years ago. You now look at this young man who killed 4 children. Okay? 4 children.
Here in Kampala.
In Kampala, in Gaba. The trial is being undertaken right there. It is, in the past, if it was Idi Amin, he would have been eliminated a long time ago. He would have disappeared. But now, the rule of law and order, the constitution prevails. You throw the book, the penal code to him, but also show the population that if you do this, you will go through the due process and be punished. Now, these are now new ingredients of governance. But the discussion about it is that there has to be civility, there has to be reality, you must also have the focus for both short-term, medium-term, and long-range. You must take care of the interests and expectations of the young generation. Because if you don't, it's a powder cake. It's a ticking bomb. You must also change the curriculum of education. Africa, for a long time, has focused on degrees. But when you look at countries like Japan, South Korea, China, India, and so on, and some tiger countries, they have concentrated more on fintech, technology, and so that you can provide jobs for this young population. But somebody who has gone to school and studied, for example, conflict resolution, religious education, social education, or social sciences, and so on and so forth, geography, how does that apply to the job market? Yeah. So you must be able to create, that's what I'm talking about, the intergeneration dialogue. You now must be able to prepare a population to meet the expectations of the new world order. And that's why you see that Africa is well-resourced. DRC Congo, for example, is 92 times the size of Rwanda, 11 times the size of Uganda. It is highly resourced. It has got
everything.
Everything is potentially richer than the United States of America and Europe put together. How do you deal with this? The best way, in my view, is to really focus on what you call the fundamentals. What do you do in order to meet the expectations? You need now to bring in the common market. Uganda manufactures, it has got excess milk. We have 5.3 billion liters of milk per annum. You need to add value to it and export to the region. Congo imports this from Brazil, from Europe, from Australia. We are just a border away from them.
Yeah.
Now, all these are fundamentals that must come in and dovetail to the long-range view and expectations of the African continent. A common market, common trade, free flow of people, addressing the conflicts internally. And that's why you find that the challenges you face between Rwanda and DRC Congo, these are conflicts that can be resolved by leaders. And they are very easy to sit down and address the challenges, the questions that Rwanda is raising, address the challenges and questions that DRC is raising. How do we harmonize them, both short-term, medium-term, and long-term, in order to avoid what Rwanda went through? These are the questions that an intelligent mind must question. Now, all this tells you that there is a common problem. What is happening in DRC Congo, in Kinshasa, is population, a city of over 20 million people approximately, needs to have food and cheap food so that they can survive. Equally, what can we get from the other side? How do we intercommunicate, moving a standard gauge railway from Mombasa to Matadi? How do we get a railway line from Cairo or Alexandria to Cape Town through Johannesburg? And so on and so forth. You look at a country like Nigeria, a population of nearly 245 million people. Africa now has a population of nearly 1.5 billion people, maybe 1.4, 1.5. China has got 1.5 approximately. India 1.5. How do you prepare the population of Uganda, the population of Africa, to be a superpower like China has? How do you prepare them like India has done? How does Africa come together? These are the questions that we must ask ourselves and now talk about intergenerational dialogue, which should not only be limited to a single country. It must be all the 52 or 54 countries of the African continent. If we don't do this and we still remain divided along the 100 plus years from the Berlin Conference, where you have Anglophone, Francophone, Lusophone, Arabic, and so on, Africa will not move out of its political quagmire and economic quagmire.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Captain. This has been a long conversation that I think has just touched the tip of the iceberg in terms of your knowledge, your experience, being a major player in the East Africa that we have today. I'd like to thank you on behalf of the audience and on behalf of myself for welcoming me into your home. And hopefully, you told me that you haven't been in Kigali since 2004, when you were watching a game between the Uganda Cranes and the Rwandan national team, the Mavubi. I'd like to have this conversation again one day, but this time in Kigali. How do we make that happen?
I really would like to see my old friends. Some of them have passed on.
Yes.
I would like to pay courtesy call. I know my brother and my friend, General President Kagame, is a very busy man. But I look forward to one day sharing a meal with him. I was there when he got wedded. I was there when the children were born. They are now in the army, they're big people. Just like I've seen President Museveni and many others transform this country. He has worked hard for Rwanda, had sleepless nights. I look forward to coming into Kigali and being able to see what I've not seen for many years.
Yes, it's been
and I look forward to seeing
a very long time.
A post-genocide Rwanda and a Rwanda that is a game changer in the African continent and possibly globally. A destination for transformation for the world.
Captain Mike, asante sana.
Thank you very much.
How do you say thank you in Iteso?
First of all, in Rwanda, you say urakoze chan.
Yes.
But in Ateso, you say eyala manoi.
Elaya manoi.
Eyala manoi. Eyala
manoi.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Urakoze chan.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
And that's a wrap for today's conversation. Thanks for staying with us till the very end. It really means a lot. I'd love to know, what was the one moment that really stood out to you? Drop it in the comments so that we can keep the discussion going. If you want to connect with us beyond YouTube or streaming platforms, you can find us on the social media platform of your choice. And if this has sparked something for you, share it with a friend who'd love it too. Until next time, have a great week.